Your hosts have earned a reputation as fierce and effective advocates inside and outside of the courtroom. Our partners are experienced trial attorneys who've been board certified in family law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization.
Thanks for tuning into For Better, Worse, or Divorce podcast, where we provide you tips and insights on how to navigate divorce and child custody situations. I'm Brian Walters. I'm one of the managing partners here at Walters Gilbreath, PLLC. Today I'm joined by my other managing partner, Jake Gilbreath, and we'll be discussing Texas's ESA, or Educational Savings Account System, commonly known as a voucher system, and how this bill is going to affect divorce and custody cases. So first, I guess an overview. This is it's an idea that's been around since a long time, at least since Milton Friedman in the 60s, but suddenly has taken root. I think it's now in 16 or 17 states. I think Arizona was the first. And the concept is basically, as a parent, you can take the money that would have otherwise been spent by the government on your child's education at a public school and take that, either stay in the public school or take it to a different accredited private school and or other school in your area. So everyone's a little bit different. Texas is it works a little bit like this. By the way, it starts next school year, so next August will be the first time that you'll be able to actually use it. Although, as a practical matter, if you've ever had your kids applying for private school, you know that process starts much earlier than that. So it's going to have a practical effect pretty soon. Specifically, what it will do is provide 85% of the cost that would otherwise be going to the public school would now be portable to a school of your choice. In Texas, that's usually around $10,500 a year. Obviously, there's private schools that are cheaper than that, not many. There's some that are much, much more expensive than that. So, might pay all the tuition, it might pay a quarter of it, depending on which school you went to. It has to go not to just any school, but an accredited private school or charter school. Those could include online or alternative schools. It doesn't go to homeschooling in the sense that the parent doesn't get the $10,500, but you can, as a homeschooler, get up to $2,000 for supplies and et cetera to be able to be used. Additionally, anybody who has a child with a disability would qualify for an additional up to $30,000, which is the same amount, the 100% of the amount that would go to a public school would go to that other school to deal with those disabilities. So up to $40,000, depending on the situation. These funds would be distributed through approved providers. It's not a direct cash. It's not cash that comes from the state to a parent. It's bounced through an ESA, Educational Savings Account, sort of like a UTMA or a 401k type thing, where it goes into a trust account and then is only dispersed to a specific entities. So that's the structure of it. And so how would that affect parents? To me, Jake, the first thing that comes to mind is, generally speaking, for the vast majority of our clients or just people in Texas, if they divorce or they split up, if they're not married, there's a lot of concern about where is this child going to go to school, because that's going to kind of be the focus of life for the next, until they graduate, right? That's where their school plays will be. That's where they're going to be picked up and dropped off. We don't do a lot of in-home drop-offs and pickups anymore. So, that where would the extracurricular activities be, that kind of thing. So, it seems to me that this is going to broaden that for some people, the people who opt into this. How do you think that might affect some of the decisions we need to help our clients make when they're going through a divorce or something like this?
Yeah, I think geographic restriction first, like you brought up, is we have to sort of think about it in a different way than we have in the past. It's important, first of all, to remember that primary residence and educational decisions in geographic restrictions are all three different things, right? Where a parent can, where really the child can live with a geographic restriction, which parent determines the primary residence, and who makes educational decisions and how we make educational decisions are three different topics, but they're interrelated a lot. I mean, just like in mediation last week, we were discussing a geographic restriction. On this particular case, we had agreed, or we were about to agree, on whether a child was going to go to school through high school. Kid was a little bit older. Parents had already discussed and agreed this particular private school. And so when we were discussing geographic restriction, there's kind of some back and forth where maybe the other side wanted a broader geographic restriction um, than one other side was asking for. But kind of looking at it, you go, well, practically speaking, really the school is kind of your practical geographic restriction. Even if we say your geographic restriction is, say, Travis and surrounding counties or Harris and surrounding counties, wherever you are in the state, if your kid's going to this particular school, that's going to be essentially a geographic restriction on both the parents, right? Unless you want to spend 2 hours in the car with the kid, y'all are going to have to live near this school. And so, when we have kind of a tighter range of schools or a specific school that we know our child's going to, it makes a geographic restriction discussion easier and less anxiety producing for both sides, right? Because, is my soon to be ex-spouse going to live way far away or make it virtually impossible? Well, if we're doing school to school exchanges, all you really care about is where the child goes to school, because that's where you're going to be spending or doing 99.9% of your exchanges. But like you're saying, Brian, if it's going to open up how many different schools we may now be practically talking about, then we need to think about that when we think about geographic restriction. And we probably need to start saying things more of like, this may be the geographic restriction. If we're going to go to a school, it's not just a geographic restriction on where the child resides, but we need to agree that the child's school is going to take place in the geographic restriction. Because in theory, you could say, well, we're going to have a geographic restriction on the child's residence on west of I-35, south of 183, something specific, say in Travis County, Texas. But then that's just where the child resides. It doesn't say what the geographic restriction of the child's school is. And so one parent could, if we don't think through it, park the child in some place that makes it virtually impossible for maybe the other parent to exercise an extended standard possession order. So I think we're going to see a lot like that. Then obviously, when it comes to educational decisions, Brian, my take, and I'm curious of what you think, but my take is it's just going to really kind of broaden the potential out there of schools that kids could go to. And that just means as family lawyers, we're going to need to plan more, both in mediation and in the court, of what are the options? Are there going to be limits of the options? So one parent in charge just can't completely upend things, for the sole purpose of mess with the other side or not, right? They could just be doing it because they think it's the right decision for the child, but it upends everything in the other household. And so we need to think about things much more broadly now once this comes into play.
Yeah, I agree. And I can see it creating more conflict. And I could also see it solving some conflicts. Like, for example, it's not unusual.
Or both.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, for example, sometimes there will be a couple will be sending their kids to a private school, but now that they're going to divorce, it's not financially practical to send them to a private school. That's a common issue. And then we might have one parent the dad say maybe, well, I'll pay for private school, but I don't want to pay for child support, or I'll pay for child support, or I'll pay for private school only if it's this school, or something like that. And so some of that stuff will be taken off the table if, for example, if the voucher is going to pay for the private school, then we don't have to have that debate about is that some kind of offset with child support or not. I could see it being some additional conflict. Let's say a parent, one was Jewish and one was Catholic, and they couldn't afford to send their child to a private school. They just happened to send them to the local public school, but now they can. And now one of them was probably going to prefer to go to a Catholic school. One's going to prefer a Jewish school. And now that choice is actually there as an option, which we probably wouldn't have thought about that before under that scenario. Now we might have a conflict. So I can see how that might be an issue. Another one is that, unlike a public school, which you kind of have to take your kid unless they, I guess, get, expelled from school, which is pretty hard to do. It's private schools are more selective. And so if you said, hey, our kid's going to go to, Austin Austin Christian School or whatever, the local private school, and that for some reason at some point, kicked one of the kids out, and the court order said to go to that school. Now we have a problem. Now what do we do as the backup? So we need to think through some of those things, because I think generally speaking, if we say, all right, our kids are going to go to, Austin High, we can probably be pretty sure they're going to get through Austin High. Maybe not as likely in a private school. It might be a little trickier to get them through there.
Yeah, just a lot more contingencies and things that could happen. And anytime you have that, you just have to plan it. Because I mean, how many times do we have clients that are coming in that are, they're coming to us for a modification. We didn't do the divorce or the original custody deal, and people just haven't thought that one extra step because they think, oh, this will never come up. I mean, sorry, the basic. I still have people come to me when they, with lawyers, had a divorce decree that says parents have to make joint decisions on education. End of sentence, right? And then, oh, wait, they live in two different school districts. And oh, wait, 5 years later, they can't agree on where the child goes to high school. And your kid, it's not like you have to be, it's not like being joint on psychological, where if you don't agree on counseling, your kid just doesn't go to counseling. Your kid has to go to school. So the more, options that are out there, people will manage to sign divorce decrees or get bad advice from lawyers and not really think through of, well, what if this happens, or this contingency opens up, or like you were saying, Brian, a child gets expelled from the school, or it just doesn't work, or the school shuts down, or what have you. More options, it's more things that we need to plan for, as opposed to just a simple, well, kids going to go to public school based on the primary parent's residence. That's it, right? That's all we have to talk about for education. And we know the kid doesn't have special needs. And so we don't have to worry about 504 plans, IEPs. Kid goes to school on primary parent's residence, into discussion. It's going to be a lot more than that now. We just need to make sure that we're all thinking through that. You have lawyers that are versed in that, are used to kind of planning for the future, right? Lack of planning for the future means you end up in my office or Brian's office for a modification when things don't work out.
Yeah, I agree. That's very much the case. So I think we talked briefly about child support. Unlike a lot of states, Texas does not, almost never, I don't know if I've ever seen it, order somebody to pay for private school as part of child support or in addition to child support. I think it's would be very hard to get, I think, unless it was under the guise of a special need or disability, which is different. But I think, as I said, I think this will largely take care of that issue. I know it's sometimes a concern. So that'll actually probably make things a bit easier. So I would think, other than that, I don't think it really would affect child support much. The other thing that you do see in private schools more frequently than public schools, although I've started to see some public schools do this too, is a more flexible schedule rather than the 5 days a week, Monday through Fridays, 7:30 to 3 o'clock or whatever. I know some public schools are starting to go to 4 days a week, or a one Monday a month off or something like that, but or a fall break on top of a spring break. But generally, private schools are going to allow more of that, and so our whole standard possession order is basically based on a Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 3 p.m. public school. And if your kid is going, I know there's some that have, they've got some clients that there's a couple schools up in Dallas that have got 2 days on, 3 days homeschooling, but 2 days at school, or vice versa, 3 days at school and 2 days homeschooling. And so that will make things a bit interesting. I don't think anybody's going to change the standard possession order over that, but that's another example of, we ought to think about that if the kids are going to go to, say, a school like that. The Thursday overnight with the non-custodial parent doesn't make as much sense as it used to, probably, in that case. And those parents might want to think about doing something a bit different, whatever that.
Yeah, particularly the Fridays off. I've seen this more and more, like you were saying, with the 4 days schedule. Everybody always sort of assumes that a standard possession order is, Thursday. If it's not my weekend, then I get Thursday overnight. That's it. And if it is my weekend, I have Thursday to Monday. That's how people think of a standard possession order. But really, technically, a standard possession order is Thursdays from the release of school on Thursday till the start of school Friday morning. And then it's from the release of school on Friday till the start of school Monday morning. So there's actually we experienced this in COVID, right? Because nobody ever thinks about that gap in time on the Friday. Because I drop my kid off at school Friday morning, I pick him up on Friday afternoon. So yeah, I have Thursday through Monday. But technically, the custodial parent has that gap on Friday. We experienced that a lot on COVID because people were staying from home, and all of a sudden, a bunch of phone calls about what do we do on the Fridays that precede the first, third, and fifth weekend. And I think we'll see that more and more. I refer to it as the gap when I'm talking about in court, but we'll see more and more kind of, does that gap really make sense? If your kid's out of school on Friday, so we're going to have the non-custodial parent drop off at the custodial parent's house Friday morning just to turn right around a few hours later, a little more than a few hours, but just turn right around and pick up for his or her weekend. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't make sense. In any event, it's something that people usually don't think about unless they have a child that goes to school just 4 days a week. Or like I said, during COVID, we all thought about it. And then, so we just need just one more thing that we need to think more about just the traditional child goes to public school all the way through high school, has a 5 day a week, schedule that has 2.5 months of summer, and that's just what it is. But it's going to be a lot more than that in the future.
Yeah, I agree. It's you think of a lot of those type of issues that can come up for sure. No doubt about it. So, all right. Well, I think that's mostly what we have. I know this created quite the political firestorm up in Austin this year, as it did in all the other states. But it's here. I think we've covered it. It's probably will make some changes, but mostly just thinking through those kind of unusual situations. So, as usual, we'd probably say, like most lawyers, talk to a lawyer about it so that you don't get yourself into trouble or have regrets later. Okay, well, that's all that we have time for today. If you like what you've heard, do us a favor and leave a review. We'd appreciate all your feedback. It helps us better the podcast. If you have any questions or are interested in speaking to one of us about your divorce or custody matter, you can reach out to us at podcast@waltersgilbreath.com or just directly to us at our website at waltersgilbreath.com. I'm Brian Walters, joined by Jake Gilbreath. Thanks for listening.
For information about the topics covered in today's episode and more, you can visit our website at waltersgilbreath.com. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of For Better, Worse, or Divorce, where we post new episodes every first and third Wednesday. Do you have a topic you want discussed or a question for our hosts? Email us at podcast@waltersgilbreath.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time.